Capito. Senator Capito, you're recognized for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being with us here today. Ms. Baker, I know this question has been asked earlier, but I'd like to re-ask with a little bit different flavor. The Tax Foundation's book minimum tax model estimates that imposing a 15% book minimum tax will increase the tax liability of the spectrum license owners by $7.2 billion over 10 years. Like many West Virginians, I'm concerned that this tax increase will delay closing the digital divide, as these companies will have fewer dollars to spend on resources to deploy 5G and other spectrum capabilities. Is it your understanding that enacting the 15% minimum tax on book income, as written in the tax and spend bill, will raise taxes on spectrum license holders, thereby raising prices on already financially strapped consumers?
It is. I'm hopeful for a technical correction so that we can consider spectrum auction holdings the same as other infrastructure holdings.
So it is meaning what? It will raise taxes?
Yes, it's both retroactive on the $200 million, over $200 million that our carriers have spent on spectrum, as well as proactively. I think it can harm. They're going to have to come up with the tax to pay for what they actually already hold that they were not expecting. I think that can harm broadband build out. I think that can harm the digital divide and will slow things down. Going forward, it will have to be built into spectrum policy when companies bid on spectrum.
Thank you. Again, Ms. Baker, the infrastructure bill set forth a significant investment in high-speed and broadband in the U.S., and as a result, more Americans are connecting. How can we ensure, in light of the conversations that we've had today, that there is sufficient spectrum to allow consumers and businesses to fully utilize these broadband networks, particularly, as you know, in my state, a lot of unserved and underserved areas?
Well, we really appreciate this committee's work on the infrastructure bill and also their emphasis to make it technology neutral. It is fiber leaning, and as we are working with the states as they develop their plans individually to hope that they realize the power of wireless and they realize the power of 5G home broadband, that they can serve unserved areas in sometimes a more efficient way. I think, as Mr. Lewis has said, getting broadband to all America is a big challenge, and it's going to require an all of the above process. And so we just want to be included in people's decisions as they make their plans.
Yeah, I would say this to the entire panel. Ask this question: is there a question of whether there's enough spectrum to handle this, or will it be robust enough for the harder areas to reach? How do you all think about this? We'll start on this end.
Thank you for the question. In rural areas, the spectrum is not as constrained because there's few users, but the same amount. There, it's a problem of economics. So you need to fix the market imperfections that don't allow the market to serve those areas.
So would that be just affordability types of issues, not enough customers, et cetera, et cetera?
It's both. On one hand, it's affordability, so making sure that the infrastructure gets out to the rural areas. As we know, a wireless network is actually a wired network with a little bit of wireless at the end of it, right. So you need that infrastructure. But also for the companies to invest in serving those customers, they need the certainty that the customers will be able to afford what's there, so right. The consumer side subsidies as well.
Right, so it's not just getting it there, it's keeping it there and well maintained.
Thank you for the question. I would agree with Dr. Bazelon in terms of the economics of it, but I would just also mention that there's, our work has shown there's great demands for spectrum kind of all over the board, for wireless communications, for Internet of Things devices, for federal uses and that are evolving. And so it's, sound management and trying to find better and more efficient ways to use that spectrum is highly important.
Any other additional comments? Go ahead.
I would agree with what's been said here, that it is a matter of getting it, because there are some areas that are just very hard to serve, and we know West Virginia has some of those places, and maintaining those networks. We also need more spectrum. The 2.5 that's at auction right now is very important and will be great for rural areas. This is the end of the spectrum pipeline. FCC is about to lose spectrum auction authority. We need to make sure they continue to have auction authority.
Yes.
I would just add that it's also important that we're setting up our spectrum policy to use spectrum efficiently and in a timely manner. So setting build-out requirements so that rural areas are not left behind. Yes, sometimes they can be deprioritized because of the lack of concentration of population. So setting these sorts of standards, and if spectrum is not used or the build-out is not done, then that spectrum can be shared or partitioned and given to others. We've seen some of this at the FCC recently with their recent ECIP decision. So making sure that we have those sorts of rules to make sure that the broadband, whether it's wired or wireless, is rolled out in a quick manner and folks aren't left behind, I think is important.
Thank you. Thank you.